Did you know that there's a bill being introduced that may impact your tax exempt status? I'm going to share in this video a new law that you should be aware of and why you need to pay attention to it. So I'm talking today about law HR 9495, and it stands for the Stop Terror Financing and Tax Penalties on American Hostages Act. And what I'm going to do in this video is talk a little bit about what it is, why it was created, what's even in it. So we're going to look at the details of the bill, but most importantly, we're going to talk about why does it matter to you as a nonprofit and why you need to be paying attention to it. And also, there's been a lot of reactions to this bill. So if you are interested in learning about what other people are saying about it, then go ahead and watch to the end of this video. I'm also going to share where it stands right now and what you can do about it. So HR 9495 is a bill that was introduced in the House of Representatives on September 9th. So it's actually been in the atmosphere for a while, but it was actually just passed on November 21st. And so you may have seen some news about this, about people talking about a new Trump law that is threatening the tax exempt status of nonprofits. But we're going to break down a little bit because that's a little bit of fear mongering. It's not really a Trump law, but let me talk about what it is. So the bill is actually broken down into two main parts. The first part addresses United States citizens who are held hostage or detained wrongfully abroad. It really speaks to them getting refunds for tax penalties or tax fines from not paying their taxes when they're detained. So the first part of it has really nothing to do with nonprofits, but the second part is about the Secretary of the Treasury being able to revoke the status of nonprofits if they support terrorist organizations. So I'm going to talk about why this was created and what you need to do about it. So why was this bill even introduced? It was introduced in response to the campus-wide protests about the conflict in Gaza. So in response to the violence and the things that were going on, this was actually introduced in a bipartisan way. So Republicans and Democrats supported the development of this bill and actually voted for this bill. Now, more Republicans did vote for it, but there are a few Democrats who supported it and allowed it to pass. But the question is, why does it matter? And before we get into that, let's talk about what's actually in the bill so we make sure that we're actually looking at fact and not just fluff that people are putting out there, because you're going to see some information saying it's a Trump tax bill and all that kind of stuff. Trump is not even in office yet, so it's not a Trump bill. But let's talk about what's in it and why people are concerned. So like I said before, the first part of the bill really is related to U.S. nationals who are detained abroad. It can postpone their tax filing deadlines and then also allow them to be refunded for any fees or any penalties as a result of not filing their taxes. So it kind of puts that in the first couple sections of the bill, but the part related to nonprofits is actually in Section 4 of the bill. So Section 4 of the bill talks about nonprofits who are terrorist supporting organizations, which is designated by the Secretary as having provided during the 3-year period ending on the date of such designation material support or resources to an organization described in paragraph 2 in excess of a de minimis amount. So that was a lot of words just to say if the Secretary of the Treasury Department decides that a nonprofit is supporting a terrorist organization, then it has the right to revoke the status of the organization. And that in part, the de minimis just means that if they feel like it's more than just a trivial amount, if they're just supporting them at a small minimum level, then it may not rise to the point where their status needs to be revoked. But essentially, that one person has the ability to revoke the tax exempt status of a nonprofit. It does go on to say that the nonprofit has 90 days to respond, so they have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the Secretary that such organization did not provide the material support or resources or made reasonable efforts to have such support or resources returned to such organization and certified in writing to the Secretary that such organization will not provide any further support or resources to organizations described in paragraph 2. So basically that is saying that if the Secretary does reach out to an organization and say that they believe that they're supporting a terrorist organization, then they either have to prove that they have not done that, or if they did, to make efforts to get their money back or get their support back and certify that they're not going to do it again. So the next part of the bill talks about an appeals process, and it talks about if the secretary isn't satisfied with the response, how that organization can go before the IRS, and they can speak with the Independent Office of Appeals, but also the U.S. District Court can review the information as well. So they do put in information about an appeals process. So to just summarize, because I know I gave a lot of text of the bill, I really just wanted to get to the meat of it to talk about what it means for you as a nonprofit. But to summarize, one person who is the Secretary of the Treasury Department can decide that you are supporting a terrorist organization and revoke your status. So why does this matter? Why are people all up in arms about this bill and fighting this bill? The biggest thing I'll say is details matter. And the issue with the bill, even though a lot of bills written by Congress are vague, it really doesn't help that this language is vague, because there are a lot of terms that are thrown out that are up to the discretion of people making decisions. And so things like terrorist organization. What is a terrorist organization and who gets to decide what a terrorist organization is? Number one. Number two, what does material resources or support mean? Is that money? Is it in-kind or non-cash support? At what level also? So in the bill, it references de minimis amount, so a trivial amount, but who decides what a trivial amount is? And so it's left very vague, and the details are just not in there, giving that one person a lot of sway or just a lot of discretion in making decisions. The other issue with the bill is that organizations don't have a lot of time to respond. And so people see that there's 90 days in the bill, but a lot have remarked that that's just not enough time for an organization to pull together the documentation or a response to be able to address the concerns of the Treasury Department. So why should this matter for you as a small nonprofit or a new nonprofit or just a nonprofit in general, especially for those people who feel like you wouldn't even be anywhere close to an issue like this, it wouldn't even apply to you? Well, the biggest concern that people are lifting up is that who gets to decide, right? Who gets to decide or who gets to frame what a terrorist organization is? And when that's left up to one person who's actually appointed by the president, then the concern is that the president can sway that decision, and the president can retaliate on individual people that he or she believes, because this could be in any administration, is against their agenda. And it could be used as a way to wield power or to challenge people who are in agreement with the administration or even in agreement with the Treasury Department. The words and terminology that people have used is unilateral control, is giving one person unilateral control to make decisions about the future of organizations, and there needs to be more checks and balances on that. So at any moment, this person can send you a letter and say, your status is going to be revoked, which jeopardizes your ability to obtain grants, which jeopardizes the trust that your donors and supporters and funders may have in your organization, and it can be a marketing nightmare. And again, who gets to say that you're actually supporting a terrorist organization? One example an organization lifted up is, what if you're providing food? Or what if you're sending medical supplies to the people who are impacted by bombings that are going on in Gaza? Someone may consider that as you supporting a terrorist organization, and it's up to one person to do that. So it really does put a lot of organizations at risk who are doing humanitarian work. So there are many high-profile and prominent nonprofit organizations like the ACLU and several nonprofit associations across the country who have expressed opposition to this bill and have signed on to letters written to Congress members to block the passing of this bill in the Senate. I just want to read an excerpt of one of the letters from ACLU so you can get a sense of why it's such a concern to these organizations. The executive branch could use this authority to target its political opponents and use the fear of crippling legal fees, the stigma of the designation, and donors fleeing controversy to stifle dissent and chill speech and advocacy. I do want to point out though that it's not that those who are in opposition of the bill support organizations that support terrorists. So I think that that can't be lost on anybody who's paying attention to this and watching this play out. It's not that the organizations want that to happen. It's just that they see the unintended consequence of the way the bill is written, so that one person can just decide the fate of organizations, and that can be misused. So it's up to you as an organization to figure out where you land on this and how you feel about this bill, but I'll tell you what's coming up next. So the bill has passed the House of Representatives. In the natural progression of laws, once one side of Congress passes one, the other side, the Senate, has to review and pass, or pass with modifications. One note is that the Senate has already passed the first part of the bill that talks about the tax deadlines and the fees for people who are held hostage abroad. They've already passed a law related to that, but it didn't include this information about tax-exempt statuses being revoked for nonprofits. So there's just going to have to be some negotiation and back and forth to see even if this bill could pass in the Senate with modifications and then go to be signed by whoever is president at the time. So it's not a guarantee that this is going to move forward. It's not a guarantee that this is going to pass. And if these organizations are successful at opposing it, it may not see the light of day, but that doesn't mean that it won't come back up again, or that another congressperson might write another bill and want to present it again. So as a private citizen, if you are concerned about this bill, this is the time for you to talk to your representatives, talk to your Congress people, so that they know about your concerns. And as a nonprofit, you may think that you're not allowed to speak on legislation or have an opinion about this, but actually nonprofits are allowed to do some level of advocacy or some level of lobbying. And that's why many nonprofits have signed on to letters and expressed their concern and oppositions already to the bill. So it is your right as a nonprofit organization to have a say in this, especially when this law will directly or may directly impact you. One thing I'll say is that's why it's so important for you to be connected with associations that represent the interests of nonprofits. So if you're not already connected to your nonprofit association, please do so. If you can't do that, at least pay attention to the National Council of Nonprofits, because they kind of stay abreast of all news related to nonprofit, especially legislation, and they are up on it and respond right away. You just need to be connected and in the know, because this may directly impact your work, and you just got to be aware. Let me know your thoughts and your comments below about this bill. If you're interested in hearing more content like this and hearing me break down laws or things that may impact your nonprofit, let me know in the comments as well. If you need help with your nonprofit or starting a nonprofit, then you can visit me at bossonabudget.com, and there are plenty of resources there for you. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.